Ever wonder what's really going on when we cook?
We delve into the history and
Understand the science of food.
so your cooking will become something special.
Know your onions, or even your garlic. Well, there's not a country in the world that doesn't use them to give depth and flavour to its cooking.
I'll be making French onion soup. We'll find out why onions and garlic were the reason for the first recorded strike in human history, and we look at just how good onions and garlic are for us.
Onions and garlic have been around for over 5,000 years. In fact, they're some of the earliest cultivated crops. As plants, onions and garlic develop their strong, pungent smell to deter animals from eating them. However, that's the very bit that us cooks are interested in.
After salt and pepper, onions are probably the most used ingredient in the kitchen. We like them so much that we each eat 14 pounds of onions per year across the world.
Oh, God.
That's 10 bags full of onions. The biggest onion eaters in the world are not the French, but the Libyans, with a staggering 67 pounds of onions per person every year. Garlic is a different story. You either love it or you hate it.
The Queen is very nervous about eating garlic at all, and her private secretary has to tell each chef, especially where she's travelling, that no garlic should enter any dish that she eats.
Most countries have some kind of famous onion or garlic dish. In France, they have onion soup. The Spanish love their gambas with garlic. And in India, they can't get enough of onion bhajis. Global favourites now, onions and garlic, both members of the allium family, have ancient and humble origins.
The wild plants all originated far away in Asia on the plains of Western Tartary. And there they colonised the rest of Asia and North Africa and Europe, far back in prehistory.
Early men were drawn to them by their potent smell.
If you can imagine hunter-gatherers, and there were these very pretty alliums with great bulbous seed heads with all the little seeds in them, which tasted good. So here was a precious plant, all of which could be used. And that kind of news travels, and so did the plant. And it travelled very quickly in prehistory.
The Egyptians were one of the earliest civilizations to cultivate onions and garlic. The bulbs became so important in their diet that they were to cause the first industrial dispute in history.
There's the story that the ancient Egyptian pharaohs were spending 90 tons of gold on the purchase of onions, and when, quite understandably, they decided to try and cut the cost by reducing the amount, the pyramid builders, it said, went on strike. And as far as we know, this is the first recorded strike in history caused by a lack of onions and garlic.
And the shape of the onion took on a huge religious significance.
Onions played very important central roles in the ritual life of ancient Egyptians. They regarded the structure of an onion with its series of concentric circles as symbolic of eternal life. It appears, most interestingly, that this symbolism has been carried over in the Orthodox Church, and that is why the turrets of their churches are decorated with these onion-shaped tops.
Throughout the ages, almost every culture has relied on onions and garlic as much more than just a foodstuff.
The ancient Egyptians, as far as we know, are one of the very first societies to recognise the medicinal properties of garlic used to cure stomach upsets and to alleviate various fevers.
The first Olympians in ancient Greece rubbed their bodies in onion juice to run faster. The Roman army ate lots of garlic for courage on the battlefield and even believed it was a cure for athlete's foot. In medieval Britain, people would use crushed garlic with honey as a remedy for rheumatism. And some people even believed that garlic held aphrodisiac powers.
One of the most famous is King Henry IV of France, who reigned in the early 17th century, who ate a lot of garlic raw because he believed it increased his sexual potency. According to one British contemporary of Shakespeare's, the king's breath was so strong it could fell an ox at 20 paces.
Garlic has an especially deep-rooted folklore in Eastern European countries.
It's very interesting. From the medieval period, we can see that in folkloric terms, that garlic begins to play quite a strong role as a way of warding off evil and vampires.
People would use garlic in physical ways to help sort of ward off evil by decorating the outside of their doors with garlic, by having it hanging up in the kitchen, by slipping it under the pillow at night time. And there's even some stories of people putting a clove of garlic in their mouth, though I wouldn't recommend that as you sleep.
Travellers abroad at night would eat large amounts of raw garlic so that their bodies would smell of it, their breath would reek of it, and they would even end up burping of the stuff.
Back on the dinner table, Europe was divided over the smell of onions and garlic. While southern European countries like France fully embraced the stinking bulbs, in northern Europe they were associated with the poor. Anyone with social aspirations steered well clear of such smelly food.
British attitudes towards French consumption of garlic have remained remarkably negative for a very long period. For instance, the poet Shelley, visiting Paris in the early decades of the 19th century, was shocked to find out, in his opinion, that ladies of rank eat, you'll never guess what, garlic.
But Britain's class-ridden attitude towards onions was about to change, thanks to the French. In 1828, farmers in Brittany had a bumper crop and crossed the Channel to sell their onions in England.
It's the onion Johnnies, these French itinerant salesmen on bicycles with their bikes festooned with strings going round door to door in this almost archaic manner, which help introduce the idea of onions as a basic vegetable to the middle classes, really on the back of a romantic image.